Hello, all you patrons. Here we are with another pre-show. Gather round.
Indeed, indeed. Another pre-show here in dear old Studio M. Still have some of the other workers estimating their cocoons. No, I'm sure it's fine. Seriously, though, it's great to be back with you. And I'll have you know that I introduced our Vincenzo to a bit of musical... how do I describe it? A portion of our culture that has been lost today, and something that I think needs a bit of a revival. I refer, of course, to that immortal work, Johnny Get Angry. Johnny Get Mad. Give me the biggest lecture I've ever had. I need a brave man. I need a caveman. The chick who sang that did not want a wuss.
Who did she marry?
You know, that's a very good question. And how often was she married?
Well, I feel like that's making it an uncharitable assumption.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's get real modern and just find out very quickly. Well, there's Leslie Gore. She didn't marry anybody. No, Johnny Get Angry was done by the immortal Joni Summers. So let's see, Joni, what became of you? What if she's still alive? What if we could get her on the show?
Unlikely.
What if we get her on the show and you blow up at her? I'll give you a caveman, honey. Joni Summers. Oh, she's 83 years old. Can you imagine? Well, and her the voice, she was once billed as the voice of the 60s. And associated with top-notch arrangers, songwriters, and producers, her popular reputation became closely tied to her biggest yet most uncharacteristic hit song, Johnny Get Angry. Okay, great. Personal life. Oh, listen to this. Summers was married to theatrical agent Jerry Steiner from 1961 until his sudden death in 1972. Their three children are Carolyn, Nancy, and Jason. Well, so she was only married the one time. So I guess she really was a one-woman girl. I mean, no, that's Leslie Gore, actually. Leslie Gore was a one-woman girl.
Well, yeah, that was truly a modern Freudian slip.
Obviously, she was a one-guy girl, is what I meant.
Yeah, okay, Charles.
Leslie Gore, on the other hand. Never mind. Anyway. Leslie Gore gave us It's My Party. And Julie's turn to cry.
Okay.
And she was a one-woman girl.
For real? Wait, what?
Yeah.
Huh.
Played for the other team, did Leslie.
Huh.
But, as they say in showbiz, it's better than a trip to the Pine Barrens.
Yes, as they say, yes.
Yeah.
Better than trip to the Pine Barrens. Can't confirm.
You never want to go to the Pine Barrens.
No.
Especially not with, I don't want to, loose lips sink ships, boss.
Right. It's easy to get lost there. Let's just say that.
That's right.
All right. Let's do some questions, shall we?
Questiones. All right? What?
I almost thought you said something else.
No, I said questiones.
Okay. Yes. Correct.
Excuse me, it's a tribute to our Hispanic heritage.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
All right, Vonday Radio, good old Vonday. He says, Dear Charles, please could you expound on quote-unquote bastard feudalism, the wars of the roses in the autumn of the Middle Ages?
The autumn leaves fall by my castle battlements. Well, that's... Anyway, well, bastard feudalism is a term that was come up with in the 19th century by various historians. And what it means is that, remember the feudal structure, the king, ultimately the emperor, was at the very height of the hierarchical structure. And everyone had lords, and very often if they were kings and lords, etc., they'd also have vassals beneath them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happened particularly in England in the late Middle Ages was that people of the middling sort, as you might say, began to forget their allegiance to the king and become simply tied into their local lord.
Mm.
Now, the problem with this, of course, is that it invited anarchy. Because, you see, remember, it's the 1400s, you're getting more and more of a money-based economy. The old tie of connections and so forth that were as much imagined as real, as we would say.
So you just said you're getting more and more to a money-based economy. So before that was a barter economy?
Yeah, not entirely. I mean, you've always had money.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more in terms of barter. There was a lot more in terms of mutuality. In other words, trading service for service.
Yeah.
As opposed, or service for land, as
Oh,
opposed to a salary or rent.
I see.
But this came up, and you had a growth in the merchant classes all over Europe, and that further stimulated the money economy. This was when wool became more and more profitable, and eventually would end up, we've discussed this before, would end up with the enclosures, which would drive a lot of the peasantry off the land in England. But at any rate, in the immediate, this caused the monarchy to become less important in the eyes of many than your immediate feudal lord. And that would in turn feed into the War of the Roses. Now, what was the War of the Roses? I'm glad you asked that question. There were these two brothers, Sam and Irving Rose, and no, that wasn't it. What it was that the royal house, the Plantagenets, became extinct in the main line. And there were two younger lines, cadet lines, the House of Lancaster and the House of York, which were roughly equal in their claim to the throne. And the badge of the House of York was the white rose. The badge of the House of Lancaster was the red rose. So, what you ended up having was a civil war between the two houses and their various adherents. Now, what added to the chaos was this very notion of my lord above my king, because my lord switched allegiances, and that exacerbated the horrors of the Civil War, because people hoping for personal advantage would switch sides and so forth. In the House of Lancaster was defeated and became extinct in the male line with Henry VI, who was a servant of God, founder of King's College, Cambridge, and Eton College. So, but he's a servant of God. He's a candidate for sainthood, a ton of miracles and all that. The irony is that he was defeated by the man who became Edward IV. He died. His brother, the Duke of Gloucester, became Richard III. Richard III, apparently, although he benefited from his family's defeating the House of Lancaster, apparently thought himself that Henry VI was a saint. And so he transferred the body from the monastery that it was at to the Royal Chapel at Windsor, where he is today.
Mm.
Richard, as Richard III, became king and reigned until 1483, when a female line descendant of the House of Lancaster, a man named Henry Tudor, invaded. And they fought a big battle at a place called Bosworth Field, and Richard III was killed. So Richard was buried in a Franciscan monastery that was dissolved at the Middle Ages. The site ended up being under a car park.
I remember this, where they found his body after, like a few years ago.
Yeah. And then they reinterred him in Leicester Cathedral. Now, of course, what he wanted was to be interred in York Minster with masses and all that, but You don't always get what you want.
I remember when that happened, I was like, how can that happen? How can there be just, oh yeah, there's a king's body here? And you said something like, oh man, this England, there's king's bodies everywhere.
That's
It's
true.
just,
It's true.
it's just.
Same in Scotland and Ireland. You find the dead kings all over the place. You don't know what to do with them. I'll tell you, it's like the King sisters. You remember when I was a kid?
Yeah.
They were performing sisters.
Not familiar.
No, well,
No.
they're part of a larger group called the King family.
Oh.
They had Christmas specials.
Oh.
And the King sisters, I think, sang with Lawrence Welk.
Okay.
See, Van Day, we're also giving you bits of American pop culture from my era that you would never have heard if I didn't tell you. Anyway, so to resume with the main part of the story. So Henry Tudor becomes King Henry VII. He does push for Henry VI to be beatified. And it probably would have happened if it hadn't been for Henry VII's annoying son, Henry VIII. But that's a whole other story. The autumn of the Middle Ages, as such, includes also the dislocations in France caused by the 100 Years' War, which were going on at roughly the same time, late 1300s, through the reign of the Lancaster kings, all the way to, well, the time of Henry VI and Joan of Arc. And it's interesting, Henry VI was a saint in all likelihood. Joan of Arc certainly was a saint, and she was fighting against him in France. He's defeated by the House of York in England, and yet the head of that house eventually becomes convinced that Henry's a saint and moves the body. Now Richard, because he was defeated and because William Shakespeare turned him into a real monster in Richard III, people have this horrible opinion of him. But there are a group of people dedicated to resurrecting his reputation. And you'll never guess what they call them.
Richard III Society?
Well, yeah, it is the Richard III Society. But there are other groups and other, people who are members of the society. As a whole bunch, this view is called Ricardianism. And people who hold it are called Ricardians.
Okay.
And the Richard III Society used to have a branch in Southern California.
Wow.
They have branches all over the U.S., Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and, of course, South Africa. Wherever the Anglo mind doth appear, you'll find supporters of Richard III. As the autumn of the Middle Ages, well, you might say it provided the economic, cultural, political backdrop to what would become the Protestant revolt. And of course, it's interesting that when the revolt occurred under Henry, what was left of the Lancastrian party tended to support the Protestant revolt. What was left of the Yorkist party tended to oppose it. But there were a lot of exceptions either way on both sides.
So, what did you say? So a saint was at war with a saint here?
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like there's a lot of occasions in history where you have something like that. I mean, you have it there. You have Woodrow Wilson, Blessed Carl.
What? St. Woodrow Wilson, pray for us.
I thought I would get you. I just thought I'd give you a little wake-up call.
You thought I wasn't awake. You see, he was making fun of me earlier, ladies and gentlemen, because I was a little Joe Bidenish. Yeah. Yeah, that's what we call it now. It's like when you go into the House of Commons, you come back from lunch, if you're an MP, and you're drunk as a skunk, they say you're tired and emotional. So now we're saying you're not comatose, you're Joe Bidenish.
There you go. Alrighty.
My Kamala. My Kamala.
Let's not invoke her name. Charles, I have a rule. I don't have a lot of rules, but one rule: no talk of annoying broads. Okay, so let's, Yeah, what? No, annoying broads? Not interested.
So if I said Joyce Behar, Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, and you. What happened? You'd get annoyed at me.
Yeah, I would.
So you wouldn't have lunch with the three ladies?
No, I wouldn't.
All right. Your loss. I could have arranged it.
All right. Kyle says, Charles, what are your thoughts on South Vietnamese president, what is it? Ngo Van Diem. Diem. And First Lady Madame Nhieu and the Buddhist barbecues that happened in South Vietnam. On one hand, Diem consecrated South Vietnam to Mary. On the other, he was a dictator and a kleptocrat who practiced policies that made life hard for the people of South Vietnam and encouraged the Viet Cong. I thought Franco did a better job and his policies were better when he unified Spain.
Well, Franco had a lot more to work with. He didn't have radical Buddhists, for one thing, with armies of their own.
Radical Buddhists with armies? That doesn't sound too intimidating.
Okay, Franco didn't have to deal with those, or with the cow dye.
Tell me about these radical Buddhists with armies. I thought Buddhists were pacifists by definition. I thought Tibet was getting stomped on because...
Well, Tibet was getting stomped on, but you heard of the civil war going on in Sri Lanka? The fighting in Burma?
These Buddhists?
You betcha. When Buddhists get tough, they get real. The wheel turns, you know.
Oh, is that some Buddhist thing?
Yeah. The Sangha. What?
Okay, the wheel turns. Yeah.
As the wheel turns, a Buddhist soap opera.
Wow, good one.
Anyway, but can a young girl from Indiana find happiness as the sub-prioress of a Buddhist monastery in Hong Kong? As the wheel turns.
Okay, so.
But to answer your question, you know, he had a lot more to deal with than Franco did in a lot of ways. And to my way of thinking, his biggest mistake was following American advice and getting rid of the emperor, Bao Dai. But in the end, we took care of him, and he was assassinated with the collaboration of the U.S. government. So I guess it all worked out. Just a couple weeks before JFK was signed off on it, got to also go bye-bye.
JFK signed off on his assassination?
Diem's assassination.
And somebody signed off on his assassination?
No, presumably, otherwise he wouldn't have been assassinated.
Okay, there's a lot to... So he did what the U.S. wanted him to do, and then the U.S. killed him.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But then I don't think Kamala Harris is being elevated to, you know, the next Empress of America.
No, we're not going to go there, Charles. All right. What about these Buddhist barbecues? So were there...
To protest Diem's government, several Buddhist monks self-burned themselves.
Oh, is that the famous one? That is so specifically for that?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. For some reason, I always assumed that was a Chinese thing. Okay.
Nope.
And what does kleptocrat mean?
Rule by theft. It's kind of like what we have today.
Knee slapping, Charles.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Somebody didn't like knee slapping. Well, what do you want? Do you want me to fall asleep or do you want me to slap my knees?
Okay, well, I guess slap your knees. There you go. All right, a bunch of questions from Helvicio.
Okay, Helvicio, we're ready.
It says, Dear Don Vincenzo and Sir Charles, may you both be enjoying some clement California weather.
Oof.
Thanks for answering my questions in the pre-show. I did not know Vincent was part Finnish.
Neither did he.
Neither did I. From Charles's reaction to H.S. Chamberlain, I would not be surprised if Chamberlain's spirit haunts the 13th floor of the Tumbler House Tower.
It may be. Some people say Joe Biden's mind is up there.
Yeah, that's for sure. I have some more questions for the erudite and picaresque Sir Charles Coulombe.
Picaresque, I like that.
Can Charles describe the influence of Jules Barbey d'Aurevilliers on his writing. What are some of that writer's best works?
Well, Barbey d'Aurevilliers was a writer of both quasi supernatural tales. We wrote about dandyism and some social commentary. He was a very devout Catholic, a very much a French royalist in the big chunk of the 19th century. His influence on my work, well, I would say that to the degree that he was sort of a generalist rather than a specialist, and saw the faith and history at the center of everything, to say nothing of the struggle between good and evil, between God and the devil. Well, I guess to that degree he influenced me.
Yeah.
He was a great believer in the power of evil and a greater believer in the power of good, and saw much of what happens in this world as a feud between the two.
King Charles VIII of France led a campaign into Italy from 1494 to 1498, which saw the triumph of French arms on many fields of battle. However, it is said that Renaissance Italy conquered the French imagination during that same campaign, effectively bringing medieval France into the Renaissance. How correct is that assessment?
Well, I would say there's a good deal of truth to it. I mean, it also resulted eventually in a number of Italian chefs coming to France under, I think, Marie de Medici, who was the Queen of France, and revolutionizing French cuisine. Of a good, much as I hate to admit it, a good part of French culinary supremacy rests upon those early importations of Italian chefs. That is true. It's not a joke, sadly.
Okay, well, that's okay. So the French supremacy. Okay.
Culinary supremacy.
Yeah, culinary, but then Italians were the reason for that. So that's kind of complicated. I'll just let you have that, and then we'll move on.
All right.
Would you consider the Chevalier Bayard as the truly last medieval knight, with all successive generations of knights tainted by a certain chivalric modernism?
No. Bayard was a great knight and a great hero, without a doubt. But you know who I would say was the last medieval knight, really?
Who?
Blessed Emperor Karl.
Interesting.
The last knight of the Grail.
Did you just arrive at that now and you just said, I'm going to go, oh, wow.
No, I mean, when you consider that he would not join the Order of the Golden Fleece until he had the statutes translated into German, so you can understand that they were in a very, very archaic French. And then he resolved to make the statutes of the order his guide to life, as it were. Yeah, I would say if anyone deserves the title of the last knight of Christendom, it'd be Blessed Emperor Karl, whose birthday is today, by the way, August 17th.
Wow. Okay. Well, how about let's learn a little bit more about Bayard.
Well, Bayard fought for Charles VIII in France and Italy, and I think in a couple of civil wars. And they called him the Chevalier sans peur et sans reproche, which means the knight without fear and without reproach. You know, he was always honorable in battle, always chivalrous to his defeated enemies. It was the very picture of a perfect knight.
That's so interesting to me how one person can stand out with those qualities, and those qualities are so so sharp and strong that they turn into legend.
Yeah.
You know?
And Bayard was certainly like that.
Because there's not necessarily some sort of legendary tale there. Like, those are just qualities. And yet...
yeah, and he was living in the 1500s, so I mean, it's not like he's a remote character or Arthurian legend.
Yeah.
But see, they had real people. There were chivalrous knights.
Yeah.
And as I say, Blessed Karl is a really good example of one. But, you know, living in our own time almost. But you look at people like him, like Bayard, like Duguesclin, and others of this sort, and you think, well, it was possible to achieve the chivalric ideal to the best that one can.
Yeah.
And these guys did.
All right. That's it for the pre-show. I know a little short one, but...
That's it.
That's it. I'm sorry, Charles.
Vinny get angry, Vinny get mad. Give them the biggest lecture they've ever had. They need a brave man. They need a caveman. Show them, Vinny, show them that you care.
I care for you guys. And thank you, everybody. And goodbye.
You really care for them.
I really care for you.
See, ladies and gentlemen, what you can get out of this guy if you really put the pressure on. Never mind. We'll see you next week, but stay tuned for the real show.